It's about time to start watching your annual tradition of watching your favorite Christmas movies. Have any of you started already? Oh, you're my kind of people. When I was growing up, our family tradition was to watch the Christmas musical White Christmas with Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, and Rosemary Clooney. I still love that movie, although let's be honest, I'm much too young for it to be my favorite. Now, my favorite song in the show is Count Your Blessings. Bing Crosby and Rosemary Clooney end up in the Vermont Lodge late one night when neither one of them can sleep, and Bing sings to Rosemary this lovely lullaby. It's obvious to everyone watching the movie at this point that they are falling in love. When I'm worried and I can't sleep, I count my blessings instead of sheep, and I fall asleep counting my blessings. When my bankroll is getting small, I think of when I had none at all, and I fall asleep counting my blessings. So our traditional word for today is from 2 Corinthians 9:11. Again, it's a short verse, but I think it's a very interesting one. It says, "You will be enriched in every way, so that you can be generous on every occasion, and through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God." Now I had to think about this text for a time. Generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. Until I read this, I was accustomed to thinking that thanksgiving precipitated generosity. That generosity was actually in response to our gratitude. Now, earlier this year, I was reading a research study done by UCLA, which showed that having an attitude of gratitude changes the molecular structure of the brain, and it keeps gray matter functioning, and it makes you healthier and happier. When you feel happiness, the central nervous system in your body is affected. You are more peaceful, less reactive, and less resistant. So the spiritual benefits are obvious, but there are physical benefits as well. How many of you would like to have those benefits? I mean, really, isn't that great? So an attitude of gratitude not only has spiritual benefits, but physical benefits as well. And there are studies showing that people who count their blessings tend to be far happier and experience less depression. In one study, researchers recruited people with mental health difficulties, including people who suffer from anxiety and depression. And the study included nearly 300 adults who were randomly divided into 3 different groups. This study came from the University of California, Berkeley. And all 3 groups received counseling services. But the first group was also instructed to write 1 letter of gratitude to another person for 3 weeks. The second group was asked to write about their deepest thoughts and feelings about negative experiences. The third group did not do any writing activity at all. And what did they find? Well, compared to the first group of participants who wrote negative experiences and only received counseling, those who wrote gratitude letters reported much better mental health even up to 12 weeks, 3 months after the writing exercise ended. 3 months later, they still had significantly better mental health. Some of you know I've had a recurring trouble with my right knee. We can all stop and have prayer service and healing and all that stuff for it. I've had to have several surgeries on it, including partial replacement, reconstruction, and full replacement. I was actually scheduled this week for another replacement of my right knee. I was not feeling terribly hopeful or grateful, to be honest, about medical science or orthopedic surgery, except for our own Brian Hakala, who has been very supportive. Through much deliberation and prayer and exercise and consultation with multiple surgeons and more prayer, I decided not to have another surgery and to see how the knee progressed. I've had to be quite creative about how to give thanks for this knee. And I'm having to learn to be grateful in my mid-50s that I can walk without a limp some days and that I can walk without pain. And then my husband broke his foot last week, and I realize how very grateful I am that I didn't have to have surgery within 2 days of him breaking his foot and both of us gimping around together. So it's a whole new reason to be grateful. And then after last week's sermon, I had conversations with several of you about being grateful, even in difficult seasons of life. And some of you asked, how can we be grateful when we are given, for example, a cancer diagnosis? How can we be grateful when we suffer the loss of a loved one, or when we're going through multiple hardships at once, or when there is a lifelong or chronic issue that we have to deal with? What role does gratitude have in those circumstances? Now, understand, I don't believe for a moment that God gives us difficult times to create a lesson or an opportunity for something better. Bad things just happen. But I do believe that sometimes going through difficulties can create opportunities for healing and growth. They may be slow and painful, but they also may produce new purpose and meaning that would otherwise be unavailable. You may also know that Eric and I became foster parents some years ago to a 15-year-old. And I will have to say, it was one of the most challenging and joyful, but also painful times of our lives. We opened our home and our hearts to a child who was not our own, and he lived with us for the better part of 3 years. His name was Kyle. We offered to adopt him, and he elected not to accept our offer. Turned out to be the right decision for him. In the end, shortly before he turned 18, our foster son asked to live with a different family. His decision was extremely hurtful to us, and it left a hole in our hearts. But we learned a great deal about ourselves and our family while he lived with us. Not all of it was stuff we wanted to know. But we kept track of him for several years, and he has now disappeared from us and everyone we know that knew him, and we don't know where he is. One of the things that we learned was that we have a lot of room in our home and in our hearts and in our family for extra people. And we can accommodate someone else's life melding into ours for a short or more extended time. We've done that along the way, Eric and I, and it's usually been a blessing. as our traditional word for today teaches, sometimes generosity teaches us to be grateful. Last week, I went to my regular board meeting at what was Interfaith Ministries. It's now known as Humankind Ministries. This is a ministry downtown for our city's homeless and impoverished population. Next door to the administrative building where the board meets is one of the shelters where the homeless men sleep during the winter months. They line up at this shelter about 3:00 p.m. on cold winter evenings for a hot meal and a warm place to sleep. Some of you may have served meals there. Each time I attend a board meeting, I feel a bit of guilt when I drive up in my warm car and I park in the lot, and then I walk into the building in my clothes and a coat and an umbrella, and then I'm prepared for whatever weather conditions may occur while these guys are huddled outside the building under blankets, braving the cold or rain or snow. I always feel that way when I see people living on the margins. Guilt, then sort of a shallow gratitude, I guess, for all that I have, and then a little bit of guilt again, and then I try to rack my brain for what I can do to be an advocate for all the people who don't have, like housing, food, medical care, mental health, clean water, access to services, education, family, support, whatever they need to get through the day. And then I realize, of course, that my guilt doesn't do them any good, and it doesn't do much good for me either. So I go inside. And as a board member, I work diligently to raise more money to help give them an opportunity to receive care and food, a warm place to stay, and care management. And then when I go outside at the end of the meeting, they are no longer sitting outside the building under blankets, but instead they are inside next door enjoying a hot meal that loving volunteers have prepared for them. And I drive home with a fresh conviction and a grateful heart that I know all of you. And I know and I love this place where each week we gather to encourage and give thanks for what we have and for each other. And I give thanks for you. For those of you who make a bucket full of change that Paul had to struggle to bring down the aisle. And I give thanks for those of you who tutor at Gammon Elementary School. And I give thanks for those of you who generously give to this church so that we can be together in this place each week and get encouragement from each other to go out and have enough energy to do the things we do each week. And I give thanks to those of you who volunteer in our choir to sing each week and encourage us. And I give thanks to those of you who serve on community boards. And I give thanks to those of you who put on a smile and come to church when you may not feel like it. And I give thanks to those of you who teach our children or repair costumes for the children's play or help with the children's choir. And I give thanks to those of you who make cookies and serve coffee. And I give thanks to those of you who usher or video the service, to those of you who visit those in our congregation who are sick or send cards to them, and all of those of you who do various things that make a difference in people's lives. And I'm grateful for you, because by doing what you do, you make a difference in people's lives, and you make it easier for people to have hope. If we, the 98 to 99 percentile, practice by being consciously grateful, as our scripture says, our hands will open more often, and the systems of economic disparity will lessen. True gratitude, I have often come to believe, prompts a desire to see others similarly blessed, while it also loosens the hold that possessions have on the grateful one. As our traditional word teaches, generosity creates thanksgiving, not the other way around. Generosity creates thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving, my friends. May you and yours truly be blessed. And more importantly, may you be the blessing. Amen.